My name is Charlotte Potter. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Guelph with the Rural Studies program. And today I'm going to be talking about our project, Braiding Food Systems, co-constructing Indigenous seed systems in Northern Ontario. This project is funded by OMAFRA, the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, and it's conducted in collaboration with Red Rock Indian Band, Pic Mobert First Nation, and Rocky Bay First Nation. And so today I'll kind of go over some background about the team, about the project, and kind of what we've done so far and what we're planning for the upcoming growing season. So just a bit of background before I jump in. This project was developed in response to the report of the Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs published in 2021. This report highlights issues of food insecurity in Northern First Nations and also includes some recommendations by First Nations leaders who called for greater support for food growing in the North, basically to supplement and live alongside existing Northern food systems, which traditionally haven't really relied extensively on agriculture or food growing in this way. The report also stresses that approaches should really consider some more of the complex factors impacting food security, which can include climatic and ecological, as well as social and economic. So responding to these challenges, this 3-year OMAFRA-funded project really aims to collaborate with First Nations communities in Northern Ontario in order to build and relocalize Indigenous seed systems, supporting not only food security, which is food access, but also food sovereignty, which exists when First Nations are able to control as well as define their food production systems. So this collaborative project aims to braid diverse expertise and experiences from seed producers, food growers, community members and leaders, as well as with crop and seed specialists and social, agronomic, and soil scientists. And we use the term in this project braiding to refer to a sort of knowledge co-production framework that emphasizes that distinct knowledge systems should really remain distinct when they work together. So by identifying complementarities and contradictions between knowledge systems, braiding really looks to build deeper understandings of some of these elements of change and challenges, which are informed by multiple perspectives all working together. And we focus on seeds for a few reasons. First, because they're the first input in food growing, so they're very important. But also by selecting seed varieties that are best suited to their contexts. Access to seed diversity can allow growers to adapt to social ecological challenges. And we also know that when landrace, wild, and locally adapted seed varieties are lost, we lose important genetic diversity that can be used by food growers locally as well as globally. But really more than just a genetic resource, seed diversity represents important biocultural heritage for groups who may have safeguarded and conserved seeds for generations. So by rematriating Indigenous seeds to foster local seed systems and seed banks, in this project, we really hope to promote community ownership and autonomy of food growing, supporting climate adaptability by conserving varieties that are well suited to the extremes of Northern Ontario. And the way we are doing that, we've assembled a pretty diverse team. No one else from the team is here with me today. We're preparing to actually go up to the north later on this week. So there's some fires being put out. But it's led by PI Dr. Silvia Sarapura. And we've got 6 students who are specializing in different areas of research to support various aspects of the project. And then as well in each of the First Nations that we're partnering with, we've got community contacts who have helped with the coordination, planning, and development, as well as we're hiring garden stewards who are really our boots on the ground, kind of helping with the day-to-day gardening activities, as well as kind of providing their observations and perspectives about the gardening process and gardening season. But it's also important to just flag that each community, even though they're relatively close, they're very different and they have different relationships to food growing. So Red Rock is the closest to Thunder Bay. It also has the largest population. And they do have some existing garden infrastructure, but they've also let us know about some of the challenges that they've had in terms of really getting it off the ground and getting people involved in managing the garden program. And then Rocky Bay, there are about 340 people living in the community. They do have some existing infrastructure, raised beds, community garden, but again, overall, there's very little food growing in the community. And then Pic Mobert, it's the most remote. It's about 4 hours from Thunder Bay and Sault Ste. Marie. And they currently don't have any kind of food growing infrastructure. But there are a few community members who are really interested and already active doing some home gardening. So they have an understanding of gardening in this context. So our project has 4 objectives. The first is to build collaborative partnerships and establish mutual trust. And we understand that this is ongoing and long-term, and it's really an evolving process. So it's not something that we can just kind of check off, but more of an evolution. And then second, we're looking to understand some of the social, cultural, and ecological contexts of each community. Identifying the elements that really impact food security and food sovereignty to understand how they can be addressed more effectively. And third, we'll help to establish community gardens as spaces to trial and plant Indigenous crop varieties, build capacity for food growing, and share knowledge between partners in order to save and conserve seeds. And lastly, we'll look to provide some policy and practical recommendations through our partnerships with communities that respond to some of these multiple and complex contextual needs of our community partners. And we base our approach in an intersectional framework, basically considering that really people contain multiple coexisting identities, which can impact their access to power, and kind of by using this framework, we really want to understand how inequalities can exacerbate existing power structures, increase vulnerabilities, and potentially reduce the benefits of some of these programs for certain individuals or groups. And we also apply participatory action research, which is really aimed at enabling more collaborative and community-led research approaches. And we also use a mixed methods approach to data collection. So we're triangulating qualitative data from some soil testing and community surveys with more qualitative data from focus groups and just general observations through time spent with community members. So we have 3 focus groups. The first is a historical climate analysis, which looks to understand experiences of climatic events in the community, as well as a visioning exercise where participants describe their past, present, and future of their food systems, and look to identify some steps that are needed to reach their goals. And lastly, a participatory seed selection workshop where participants learn about potential seed varieties and then decide what and how they would like to grow. Oh, and I should mention that we conducted these activities in March, so we're just kind of now in the process of analyzing and understanding this data better. And then in year 2 and 3, so starting this growing season, we'll have the support of our garden stewards who are going to collect daily observations of the garden in terms of agronomic aspects, as well as community engagement and more social, cultural aspects of the day-to-day of the garden. And I just also want to mention briefly, ethics and data are a really important aspect of our project. They've been a really key consideration throughout the design and implementation. So we do have ethics approval from 2 review boards. The first is the University of Guelph, as well as the Manitoulin Anishinaabeg Research Review Council. And everything that we've done in terms of data management. So our data management plan and just general design has been designed in accordance to the OCAP principles, with full acknowledgement that each community has full ownership over all the data produced in the project. And so, yeah, now I just want to touch briefly on some of the activities that we've already done. Kind of at the beginning of the project and last fall, we hosted some community meetings in each of the communities. The purpose was really just to meet with the chief and council, as well as interested community members, have a chance to introduce ourselves and the project, and use that as a chance to kind of get feedback to remodel the areas of the project that need to be changed depending on the specific needs of each community. We have also done some data collection, like I mentioned before. So in the fall, we conducted some soil testing just to look for the presence of any heavy metals, to understand the types of soil that exist within the community, and to understand whether any kind of organic inputs were needed. We also conducted a survey, and then, like I mentioned before, conducted the 3 focus group discussions. And actually, so yeah, coming up in a couple of days, we're going to be going back up to the Thunder Bay area to visit each of the communities to start the garden setup. So we'll be constructing raised beds, setting up the garden, planting the seedlings that we've been propagating. And we'll also be hosting some learning and action workshops with the garden stewards, as well as community members who are interested in really engaging with this project. And yeah, I also just wanted to quickly mention some of the knowledge mobilization activities that we've done so far. So as a result of our soil testing, we produced some infographics for each of the community, just to kind of break down some of the more technical aspects in more of a understandable way for people who might not have as much knowledge about, yeah, again, the technical aspects of soil. We also have created a seedling and garden setup toolkit, really breaking down in super simple verbiage, like the way to set up a garden and propagate seedlings. And again, we've been taking kind of multiple areas of knowledge into consideration to construct these toolkits. We also have a website, seedsresearch.ca, and we've had a chance to be in the news a few times. So we had an interview on Fresh Air and a couple of articles published in local publications. And then in terms of the next steps, like I mentioned, we'll be going up to construct the gardens. And then throughout the growing season, we'll be working with the garden stewards to collect citizen science. So just general kind of garden observations, both agronomic and social. And then in the fall, during the harvest season, we will host some workshops on seed saving. And then set up the seed banks and conduct some workshops on like what to do with your harvested food. So whether that's recipes or canning and preserving. So we'll really let that be kind of iterative based on what we hear from each community on what they'd like to see. Yeah, and so that's all for me. If there's any questions, happy to answer anything.